media is finally realizing that perhaps Bernie Sanders was right all along. Look at what they're saying now that we are officially a nation in crisis.
City and state emergency services around the country are pleading with the White House for more protective gear amidst the coronavirus pandemic. On Sunday, President Trump again resisted invoking the Defense Production Act, wartime authority to mobilize industries.
We're a country not based on nationalizing our business. Call a person over in Venezuela, ask them how did nationalization of their businesses work out? Not too well. The concept of nationalizing our business is not a good concept.
Joining me now is Michael Chertoff, former Homeland Security Secretary for President George W. Bush. Thank you very much, Michael. I know you're an expert of crisis management around the world. With all due respect to the president, the Defense Production Act, created in the Korean War after all of the wartime production, the B-17s that all the Rosie the Riveters produced, is not socialism, it's not Marxism, it's not Venezuela. It's very much American to have this act and have it ready for a crisis such as this.
Speaking, if there is any precedent, what fixes this? What should they do today?
So this is a great question. In the space of 3 weeks, I've gone from asking questions like, how do we pay for certain policies, to retweeting tweets from the likes of Bernie Sanders and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. We need to protect people, the most vulnerable people in society, and we need to do it in size, and we need to do it at speed. So these cash handouts that people are talking about, exactly right. The problem is we've done this in the past, and those checks took an average of 2 months to get to people. We need a massive fund to support small and medium-sized enterprises, perhaps interest-free. Let them borrow money so that they don't fire their employees, even if they're not doing anything.
Anybody who's sincere about addressing a crisis like we have right now, they instantly become lefties. Instantly. You want to know why? Because in a time of crisis, nobody's like, man, the government needs to do a lot less, doesn't it? What? No, the only way you can mobilize to fix some of these problems is with a centralized effort. It's the only way. Top down. Sometimes you need top-down solutions. Listen, doesn't mean bottom up is not a thing that should happen quite a bit. It should. But in certain circumstances, like climate change, for example, it needs to come from the top down. We need to enact government policies. There's no way around it. You have to do that. By the same token, dealing with a pandemic, you need to lock down the country. You need quarantines. You have to do that in order to curb the spread of this thing. You have to have a national healthcare system to really mobilize in a way where you get all the hospitals what they need. There's no way you could do it with our ragtag, broken down, fragmented system where, there's no centralized authority really making the decisions. This is why Spain nationalized their hospitals in this crisis. They didn't have nationalized hospitals before. Now they do, because they're like, we have to address this. You can't have a system where, people are worried about making a profit in a pandemic. What are you going to do? So what happens? If you're not going to make a profit, you're going to turn away everybody that needs the care? The incentive structure is all messed up with the system. And right now you're seeing, and the other point is the direct cash to people. Like, yeah, we need to do that. There's no way around it. If you don't do that, we're looking at a crisis that's even greater than the Great Depression. Now, the thing that Andrea Mitchell was talking about is fascinating because it's the Defense Production Act, which basically makes it so that the president can tell private businesses, stop what you're doing, help us with this effort, like it's a war effort. We're fighting a war against a pandemic, a war against a virus, very similar to a war against a foreign enemy. So the idea is, let's make it so that private businesses are compelled to make the things that we need. Namely, you go to car companies and they have the ability to make ventilators. So you go to them and say, make ventilators and make them now. The president demanding private industry do certain things. And notice what they said there. What is effectively temporary nationalization of certain industries. You got Andrea Mitchell like, this isn't socialism. This isn't Venezuelan. This is so American. Man, it finally occurred to me after seeing this clip and after seeing something that Jimmy Dore retweeted. Because somebody tweeted to Jimmy Dore, hey man, I don't want to call a direct cash payment to everybody and free healthcare for COVID-19. I don't want to call that socialism. It's Americanism. So you're telling me all along the answer was right under our noses. That the way you get Americans to fully embrace a left agenda, even though they already do when you go issue for issue, but the way you bump up support even more to where it's nearly unanimous is to just cloak it in patriotism. That's it? That's all you had to do? Okay, noted. Noted. Moving forward, we will be doing that on this show. Why? Because it clearly works. When you can get MSNBC hosts who are corporatists to their core to be like, I think we should nationalize businesses to make sure that we can fight back against this common enemy of the virus. I think the federal government should compel private businesses to do certain things when it's necessary for the nation. You don't say. Okay, great. So from now on, we will be endlessly pushing the notion that all these programs and a left agenda is deeply American. Deeply American. FDR, Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed doing what? The Poor People's Campaign. He was killed protesting for union rights, for labor. So, there is a strong history, whether it's the war on poverty, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, of leftism in America. That is as American as apple pie. So let's say it. Social democracy or democratic socialism as American as apple pie. So I got it. I will now use that framing moving forward because apparently that's all you needed to really convince everybody, including corporate media hosts. I love when that commentator said, I went from asking how are we going to pay for all these things to retweeting Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, so you woke up. You woke up. You realized oh, this is really serious. And there's only one way to fight this, which is to actually fight it by mobilizing at the national level and having the federal government spring into action. So congratulations. Now, just make sure that when this crisis is over, you don't go right back to being wrong. Because in the same way that we desperately need national health care and people to get free treatment for coronavirus, we need it for cancer, we need it for strokes, we need it for heart attacks, we need it for other viral diseases, we need it for other bacterial infections, we need it for everything when it comes to health care. The direct cash payment, I'll tell you what, now it's very clear. People are like, oh my God, look, so many people are going to be unemployed, so many people are going to be screwed, they can't pay the bills. I got news for you, man. We have tens of millions of working poor people in this country before the crisis. Now we're just exacerbating how many people are going to be unemployed and how many people are going to be in dire straits. But there were always people, talking about 500,000 homeless people, for example. People who work full time and don't make enough money to survive. They were always there. So now you could see how stark it is with a crisis. Just keep these things in mind. Keep it in mind for when the pandemic is over, because we're still going to have massive problems that we need to attack in a way where we embrace left solutions, because they're the only solutions.